I am an adult human male in his 30s who has witnessed many presidential elections, and I can't for the life of me figure out what it is the Democrats are actually doing, because I will tell you this, they're certainly not trying to win. I'm not exaggerating. They're literally not campaigning. Okay, that's a little bit of an exaggeration, but they're seriously doing almost nothing. Republicans are registering more voters. Trump campaign knocks on 1 million doors a week. Biden's knocks on 0? What is this? Joe Biden's now skipping the DNC? They're not even doing anything. Joe Biden's been hiding in the basement, and I can't understand what is going on. In fact, a new poll came out showing that in California, Trump is doing better with the Latino community relative to past elections compared to Democrats, and that he's actually seeing his polls improve among the black community as well. What are Democrats doing right now? They're literally not campaigning. And I mean that in a relative sense. It's almost like they know they're going to lose, so they're sitting back and just saying, sure, fine, whatever. Joe Biden won't be going to Milwaukee now for the DNC because of COVID concerns. He doesn't even have a VP, and it's already August. The election is only a couple months away. And we don't even know who we're going to be voting for, let alone what Joe Biden's policies are, because he's been hiding in the basement for basically forever. This to me is just weird. And I've been hearing people mutter about this, basically like, hey, I just realized the Democrats aren't campaigning. In fact, we've got one story, an op-ed from a Latina who says, why aren't the Democrats reaching out to me, but Trump is? The Republicans are reaching out. I don't know. I can't tell you. What I can tell you is you've got people in media that are doing the work for the Democrats, and maybe that's what they're counting on. Right now, Joe Biden's not doing anything, knocking on 0 doors. But you know what you can expect? Some puff piece to finish Joe Biden's sentences for him. Just the other day, I guess, Joe Biden was doing some round table discussion, and he questioned, I believe it was a CBS reporter, as to whether or not he was being tested for doing drugs, and asked if he was a junkie because he was offended someone asked him about his mental state. They said, you're taking the mental test? He's like, hey, how dare you ask me? What, are you a junkie? The dude clearly can't think straight. He is an inviable candidate. I said this before. Look, probably at the beginning of the year, I said Joe Biden is not really running. And this was in the primary. Then he actually started winning. And I was like, wow, I guess I was wrong. I guess Joe Biden is running. And now here we are again. This story from Politico made my jaw drop. And I sat here confused for several minutes saying, what are they doing? If they're not trying to register voters, if they're not trying to convince people to vote for them, there's one strategy. There's one strategy they may be trying to use. Hide Joe Biden and hope that the media smears Trump enough that the rage against Trump is actually what gets Joe Biden elected, I guess. But I really just don't believe it. There's a story going viral about an MSNBC reporter who said that even when the story should be about Joe Biden, it's framed as Trump doing something wrong. Or they cram Trump's name in the headline because it results in more clicks, I suppose. But she says she quit, basically. This woman quits MSNBC complaining about cable news and says, once again, just like 2016, it's all Trump all the time. Is that their plan? Maybe it is. Maybe this is what's really going on. They know they don't have a candidate who can actually go up against Trump. Joe Biden is not viable. He has no VP. He's locked in a basement. He's not traveling. He's skipping Wisconsin. The DNC, okay, to be fair. And maybe they're hoping that everything that got Trump elected last time will get someone else elected this time. I don't believe it. Maybe because they were showing too many of Trump's rallies, they're thinking that by showing him in a negative light more so, but they were showing him in a negative light last time. They're obsessed. And maybe these media companies really want him to win. But I'll tell you what, if I was more of a conspiratorial thinker, I'd be saying, man, I think they want Donald Trump to win. That's the only way I can explain the absurdities of what they're doing, lying about Antifa and the far left, joining in the protests, supporting them, violating equality under the law with these messages painted in streets, and then literally, look at this, and not campaigning. The Democrats aren't campaigning. So I don't know, you asked me, but I'll tell you what we can do. Let's read exactly what's going on with this, because I got a bunch of stories lining up the weird behavior going on in this election that I can't quite explain. And I want to talk to you about how mail-in voting is basically just collapsed at this point. Now, I'm not going to argue that they're secretly cheating already, But I'll tell you what, man, in Brooklyn, they just qualified 25% of the vote. We saw the same thing in Paterson, New Jersey. What comes next? Are they just hoping that there's no election? They're going to burn it all down? I don't know, man. But I find it weird. Don't you? This story, come on, tell me that's weird, right? Okay, I'll calm down. Let's read the news. Before I get started, head over to timcast.com/donate if you'd like to support my work. There's many ways you can give, but the best thing you can do is share this video. And as you share it, ask people, why aren't they campaigning? Are they not? Maybe they know they're going to lose, but Biden's up in the polls across the board. Maybe they're hoping that by just shutting up and doing nothing, they're going to coast through hatred from Trump. I don't know, man. But share the video and ask people what they think. And don't forget, subscribe to my channel if you really do want to make sure you get access to my videos. Around half the people who watch don't actually subscribe. So smash that subscribe button and the like button and the notification bell. And apparently that will, well, it'll be the best you can do, hoping YouTube lets you know my videos are up. But let's read this story. And I've got a bunch of stories to go through that I just find weird, to say the least. Trump's campaign knocks on 1 million doors a week. Biden's knocks on 0? The diverging response to COVID-19 could be a wild card in November, especially in close races up and down the ballot, they say. The Republicans and Democratic parties, from the presidential candidates on down, are taking polar opposite approaches to door-to-door canvassing this fall. The competing bets on the value of face-to-face campaigning during a pandemic has no modern precedent, making it a potential wild card in November, especially in close races. Biden and the Democratic National Committee aren't sending volunteers or staffers to talk with voters at home, and don't anticipate doing anything more than dropping off literature unless the crisis abates. The campaign and the Democratic National Committee think they can compensate for the lack of in-person canvassing with phone calls, texts, new forms of digital organizing, and virtual meetups with voters. Have you guys tried watching any of Joe Biden's virtual events? He gets almost no viewers. I don't get it, man. I really don't. Look, the polls show Joe Biden winning across the board with all of these, double-digit leads and stuff like that. Now, Trump has been improving as of recent. But then at the same time, you look at digital media, you look at view count, and I get more views on my videos than Joe Biden gets on his live streams, and he's running for president. You'd think there would be some people willing to watch him. Now, again, I think the easiest explanation is the Democrats aren't actually running. They're literally not campaigning. The media is campaigning against Trump, and that's their big bet, I guess. Bold move. We'll see if it plays out, how it plays out for him. Here's what they say. Quote, "At first, I was nervous, but our response rates on phone calls and texts are much higher, and people are not necessarily wanting someone to go up to their door right now," said Jen Ritter, Biden's national states director. "You get to throw a lot of the rule book out the window and try out new things." Trump and the Republican National Committee, in contrast, started deploying mask-wearing field staffers and volunteers to the streets in June. The GOP quickly ramped up and now claims more than 1 million doors a week, despite COVID-19 surges across the country, including in swing states like Arizona. Republicans say their door-knocking dominance could make a difference in November, since in-person conversations have long been considered the most effective type of voter contact. Quote, "From now to Election Day, voters may only see one campaign at their doors." Elliot Eccles, the RNC's national field director. "If this were Barack Obama running, Democrats would want to be out there knocking doors. They don't have enthusiasm or a strong field operation, so it's a convenient excuse. We can do this safely for President Trump and Republicans up and down the ballot. Phone calls don't work, man. I know for a fact. I've worked in the nonprofit field. We know door-to-door, face-to-face fundraising and engagement is substantially more effective than phone calls. You do not. I think they're wasting their time. And I think, based on all of the news we've seen about these parties where people are throwing massive house parties, they're not going to be super concerned. Someone comes knocking on their door. Let's be honest, man. I get food delivered. I get Amazon delivered. I'm not freaking out about it. Granted, my moderate persuasion puts me in a less timid, disposition than many of these Democrats, perhaps. But I imagine many of these Democrats get deliveries to their door. Some may be paranoid about COVID. That I can understand. But if someone, came to your house, knocked on your door, you don't got to touch them, and they could be wearing a mask. They are giving up one of the most important campaign strategies because of COVID, I guess. That's the reason. But I'm honestly not convinced. It just feels like they're not campaigning, especially when you consider how they're hiding Joe Biden in a basement. Check this out. Biden to accept Democratic nomination virtually as DNC further scales back 2020 convention. The announcement came amid a broader move to make the entire convention virtual. Why? Now, I know I get it, COVID, but it just seems so weird that they're just dragging out the collapse of what is supposed to be some kind of campaign for the presidency. Donald Trump is going hard. He's trying to have these campaign rallies in states where they're not letting him. He's trying to push for these things. He's speaking up about it. He's speaking a lot. Joe Biden's hiding. It is night and day. They say Joe Biden will not travel to Milwaukee to formally accept the Democratic presidential nomination at his party's convention due to concerns over the coronavirus pandemic. The Democratic National Committee said Wednesday. Biden will accept his nomination virtually from his home state of Delaware, the DNC said. The other scheduled speakers, including Biden's eventual running mate, will now address the convention remotely as well, the committee said, a move that in effect makes the event all virtual. What? So look, man, fine, I get it. But if Joe Biden can't travel because he's scared of COVID, can he really be president? I don't know, man. I just think all of this is weird. Take a look at this. Biden hits back at reporter asking if he took a cognitive test. Are you a junkie? The dude's clearly out of it. Maybe this is why they're not campaigning. They know Joe Biden is not viable. They know they'll lose if people realize what or who he is. So they're like, we got name recognition. We got Obama nostalgia. Put his name on a ticket and everyone shut up. How is that supposed to beat Trump? Unless, of course, their real goal is that the media just rags on Trump endlessly. Sure. Democrats warm to Biden's bunker strategy. Since the former Veep launched his stay-at-home campaign, his lead has grown to double digits in national polls. Is that it? I don't know, man. I don't think it's going to work for me, for the people I know and the people I talk to. And I've talked to a lot of people I know who have told me, 8 months ago, beginning of the year, they were on board for the Democrats. Then you ended up with Democrats defending Antifa, protecting these riots, and now they're swinging in totally in the other direction. Take a look at New York, where 420,000 to 500,000 people have fled the city. This is middle class to upper class people. Are those people, should we assume they're Biden voters? They're not going to want to support the riots the way the Democrats have. They need to speak up and speak out. Joe Biden himself recently said that these extremists should be found, arrested and prosecuted, convicted. Great. Why not push on that message? Honestly, I don't know, but I do have some ideas. I think it's possible that maybe they're worried the more Joe speaks, the more it'll divide the Democratic Party, because you've got the far left and the moderates. So their best strategy is to just be the anti-Trump campaign, because both moderates and, far left don't like Trump, perhaps. This one really got to me. Joe Biden's campaign names first Texas hires for general election. It's August. The announcement comes as polls continue to show a close race in Texas. Wait, hold on. It's August. Joe Biden doesn't have anybody in Texas? His first hires August 3rd? Some doesn't make sense. Now check this out. Axios says the 2020 voter registration race. They mention the Trump campaign and RNC have now registered 100,000 new voters in the 2020 cycle, more than doubling their numbers from 2016, according to new Trump victory data. When I look at this data, when I look at the sentiment online, when I look at the numbers in media, you look at a video from Joe Biden, nobody watches it. You look at these, some of these far left, statements, all thumbs down, these videos they put out. You look at people calling out Antifa. You look at channels like mine, thumbs up, everybody's watching, tons of views. And I wonder, why is it that moderate, conservative, independent commentary is skyrocketing on YouTube? And the progressives do well, but they're growing a little bit. What's causing this shift? Well, they mentioned something really interesting in this. Check it out. The voter registration gap between Democrats and Republicans has narrowed in some of these key states, according to Trump victory and Axios review of those state records. But a lot of it has to do with voters switching parties or dropping out of the electorate, not necessarily a surge of new voters registering as Republicans, nor indicating new Trump voters, according to Dave Wasserman of the Cook Political Report. Okay, that was huge. What they're saying, according to Trump's data, they're not making they're not making new voters. Maybe they did in 2016. What's happening is independent voters are now registering as Republicans. But that also means Democratic voters are switching parties. They say this right here. Trump is closing the gap. Okay. There are more registered Democrats than Republicans. That was true in the last election, and it's typically true in most places. The gap is closing as they've registered 100,000 new people, but they say it's voters switching parties or dropping out. You know what that would mean? That would mean that people who are registered as Democrats are quitting the Democratic Party. Could this be Democrats walking away? Could the Democrats know that they've already lost, and so they're basically saying, don't strain your resources and don't put too much into this? Maybe that's the real reason they're not campaigning. They know Trump is going to win. The polls are meaningless. They got the polls wrong last time. They don't think they can get them right this time. And they're seeing the Democratic Party fall off. This is crazy to me. They say Democrats are still registering more new voters than Republicans in many key states. Okay. I wonder, man. I really, really do. We heard from many progressives, like Cenk Uygur of the Young Turks, that their goal has long been to abandon the middle. I'm not exaggerating. They don't want the moderates. They want new progressives. According to nationwide polls they like to cite, America is a progressive nation, they say, and they believe their true path to victory is to create a new unified progressive party. And they don't care about moderate voters. The only problem I see with that, many Democrats are moderate. Now, most conservative Democrats, and yes, they used to exist, are gone. But they don't realize they're not abandoning independent voters. They're abandoning their own voters who have no choice but to join the Republican Party or quit the Democratic Party. And that's what it says. To me, it's absolutely insane what they're trying to pull off. But take a look at this anecdote from AZ Central. I'm Latina and a registered independent. Why did the GOP court my vote but not Democrats? I don't know. I can't tell you, man. I mean, I've given you some potential reasons, but I'll tell you this right now. They're not campaigning. Why did the GOP court her vote and not this Latino and not the Democrats? They say, if Democrats want to win in November, they can't take any voter for granted, not even those who live in traditionally Democratic neighborhoods. It's what Hillary Clinton did in 2016. I think we are tracking once again for a repeat of 2016. Now, for the most part, there's a big difference. Hillary actually campaigned in many areas and she tried to win. Joe Biden doesn't seem to be trying to win at all. So I'll tell you what, I don't have the answers as to why that might be, but I can tell you what they've proposed is a broken system. Now, I want to avoid being overly conspiratorial, but I'll just tell you, take a look at this. 25% of ballots in Brooklyn June primaries invalid. They say a staggering 25% of mail-in ballots cast in Brooklyn for June's primary elections were declared invalid. It was revealed on Tuesday as Mayor Bill de Blasio called on the Board of Elections to shape up by November. More than 120,000 absentee ballots were filled in Kings County for the June 23rd primary, but about 30,000 were initially disqualified. And it wasn't the fault of the voters, according to Rodney's Bichotte, head of the Brooklyn Democratic Party. Bichotte, also a state assemblywoman whose district includes Flatbush, Ditmas Park, and Midwood, said the disqualifying issues included a lack of postmark or late arrival. The BOE was still untangling the mess 6 weeks after the primaries and was unable to provide hard citywide figures on Tuesday. But the Brooklyn debacle suggests a troubling failure in a system that may be relied upon to elect a president this fall. I'm sorry, man. If they can't handle this in one little rinky-dink county in Brooklyn, okay, it's not rinky-dink, it's Brooklyn. They're very dense and complicated districts. How are they going to handle a presidential election nationwide with all of these different districts, many of them doing mail-in voting? Trump is now suing in Nevada over their push for for statewide mail-in voting. If we're seeing these problems at this level, then wouldn't it stand to reason we're going to see substantially worse problems? We've already heard it. So here's why I'm tying this together. Maybe the Democrats aren't bothering to campaign because they know there's not going to be an election night and it won't matter anyway. I'm not going to go so far as to say that they're going to actually forge fake ballots, but I'll tell you this, man. It's never been easier to cheat. Check it out. Bill Mahoney on Twitter, this is writing for Politico, says, a judge orders New York's Board of Elections to immediately begin counting many ballots that came in without postmarks. You know what that means? That means somebody could take a mail-in ballot and just walk up and throw it in the room, and you don't know who it is or where it came from. They didn't get it from a mailbox. There's no postmark on it. Now, the issue may be that some people, sometimes the post office doesn't postmark them because it's prepaid postage or whatever. Either way, how easy will it be for anyone to just take a big stack of ballots and just drop it in a box and be like, boom, there you go. And you have no idea where they came from. Then you talk about all the people who have been getting mail-in ballots to their homes for people who don't live there. I saw one viral tweet where somebody got 5 for the 5 past, previous residents. And that's insane. I got a mail-in ballot to my house for someone who did not request it either. Bill Mahoney says, Governor Cuomo has allowed Donald Trump to try to tee this one up and hit it out of the park, plaintiff attorney Ali Najmi says on Zoom. This is something that could have been done by executive order. We have essentially created an unnecessary disenfranchisement of voters. Is that what they're calling it? They disqualified 25%, many because they had no postmarks. So now they're saying, you know what? Just count them all. What happened in Paterson, New Jersey? Do you know? Did you hear the story? I covered it several times. 20% of the vote was disqualified, many because signatures didn't match and because they were found bundled together in some mailboxes. What if a judge said, nah, just go ahead and count them? They indicted 4 people on voter fraud charges. So this whole system is busted and broken. Trump is now suing Nevada. Trump campaign sues Nevada over plan to mail ballots to all registered voters, which means there's going to be a bunch of people who shouldn't be registered, who moved. There's going to be a bunch of ballots flying around. And here's the way I've explained it before. When it comes to absentee ballots, you don't know who might have one. And if you went mailbox to mailbox, you're not going to find one. People have to request absentee ballots. Now, with mass mail-in voting and where they just send it out to everybody, it's going to be very easy to go into certain areas where you know there's extremely low turnout and go mailbox to mailbox and someone could just snatch up whatever, mail-in ballots they want. They'll be everywhere. It is going to be a nightmarish disaster of an election. And maybe that's why they're not really campaigning, because the Democrats don't care. They know it's not going to be an election night. I'm not going to go so far as say they're going to forge the votes, but maybe they're just like, we don't need to. We don't need to do anything to tell anybody anything. I don't know what to expect, man. The only thing I can say from this, I have no conclusions as to why it's happening. I just personally find it very, very weird that Joe Biden is effectively not campaigning, having only just sent someone to Texas now, not sending people door to door, not going to the DNC in Milwaukee. Now there's talk that there's people saying he shouldn't debate. A bunch of articles have popped up from Biden, allies or whatever, and op-eds from journalists saying Biden should skip the debate over COVID concerns or because Trump's a liar. So it's just, are we real? You know what? I think I can see what it is. We are not, there's no actual election. It's a referendum on Trump. That's it. Do you like Trump? Do you want more Trump? Is that it? I'll tell you what. The biggest mistake the Democrats made for me is when they defended the far left extremists after months of rioting, after video showing them doing it. And then they said, that's a myth. Jerry Nadler, after like 3 months of riots, he said Antifa violence is a myth. Okay, these people are unfit for office more so than you could ever argue about Donald Trump. Because Trump's got his issues, and boy, does he. But at least he understands there are things that really exist. So maybe this is it. They don't care about the mail-in vote. They just want to say whatever Trump is doing, we do the opposite. They don't care about campaigning. It's just, do you like Trump or do you not like Trump? And I'll tell you what, man. We've known this for a while. Take a look at this from May 21st, 2020, Washington Post. Here's the problem with mail-in ballots. They might not be counted, especially for younger, minority, and first-time voters. So they're sacrificing their own voter base? I don't know, man. They chose an old guy who is creepy, sleepy, and corrupt. They're hiding him probably for these reasons. And now we have this. Judicial Watch sues to obtain Hunter Biden travel records. Joe Biden was like the worst possible pick. You know what I think? I'm just going to say it. I think they've always expected to lose and that Trump is going to see a tremendous landslide. I'm not saying I'm predicting this. I'm just saying maybe this is one of the reasons. Joe Biden is corrupt. He's got negative press. He's not campaigning. Nobody cares about him. There's nothing there. So they don't want to waste a Buttigieg or, a more prominent candidate. So they choose Joe Biden. They put him up saying Trump's going to win. Use Joe Biden and then we'll have a fresh face for 2024. Maybe that's the plan. Maybe they're scared that anything Joe Biden says will be divisive because the Democrats have no unity. Maybe they're worried that Joe Biden will call a TV anchor a junkie like he just asked. Maybe they're worried about Biden being completely incapable. And so they're saying, you know what? If their best bet is to cross their fingers that people hate the president, and that's the only thing that makes sense. Now, I'd like to believe that. I would. But if that were true, there would be people going door to door for the Democrats. But they're not. There would be someone knocking on doors saying, here's why you should vote for our candidate. They're not doing it. It seems like they expect to lose. Maybe I'm wrong. We'll see how things play out. I'm sorry, man. I'm just going to wrap it up by saying one more time. Don't you find all this very, very weird? Like everything that's going on with mail-in ballots, the Democrats not even campaigning? I know they're really campaigning with some stuff, but come on. The scale to which they're trying is absurd for a presidential election. It just seems odd to me. Whatever, man. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 6 p.m. over at youtube.com/TimCastNews. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you there.